Hey friends, I hope you enjoyed this teaching on karma, and if you would like to learn more about it, please check out my new book, The Buddhist Path to Joy. You'll find a link below. So today's talk is about, honestly, one of the most important, but also maybe a pretty misunderstood topic in Buddhism, which is karma. And I'm really interested in reincarnation, rebirth, how we can kind of optimize our chances for a better next lifetime, whether you think of that next lifetime honestly as you 2 decades from now or 3 years from now, whatever it is, you in the future in this lifetime or you in the future in another lifetime, these sort of best practices for purifying negative karma and bringing in positive karma, they work either way, whether we're talking about this lifetime or the next. So I wanted to just jump in with a definition here of what is karma. I think a lot of people throw this word around and sometimes they use it as meaning something like luck. And sometimes it's kind of just using these different ways that are not necessarily the original intention of this word in Indian culture or in Buddhist culture. And of course, Buddhism comes from India, so there are different traditions that use this word karma, and they tend to use it in similar ways, but just to be specific, I'm talking about Buddhist definitions of karma. And, I think sometimes people think about karma as being a little bit like a bank account. Like when you do bad things, you kind of withdraw your karmic funds, and when you do good things, you put karmic funds into your bank account. And I think that's not a bad way to kind of start out by thinking about karma. But the thing that's really, I think, that goes beyond that bank account metaphor is that karma is it's like momentum. It's like the habits that you form. So the more you do a certain thing, the more you're likely to keep doing that thing. But just to start out with a really basic definition, in the Sanskrit, that's what karma is, it's Sanskrit. Kamma would be the Pali word. So if you're interested in Theravada forms of Buddhism, you're probably going to hear kamma. And if you're following Mahayana forms, you're more likely to hear karma. So just a little note on language there. But basically, karma just means action taken with intention. So if I, for instance, see an insect on the ground and I think I want to kill that insect and I stomp on it and it dies, it's a karmic action. It's an action motivated not really by a great state of mind, I see that bug, I think it would be fun to smush a bug, so I'm just going to do it. It's kind of a hateful or a harmful state of mind. If on the other hand, I'm walking along, I'm trying to be mindful and notice where I'm stepping, but maybe there's a bug hidden under a leaf. I don't see it. I step on the leaf. I smush the bug. Karmically speaking, that's a very different action. So the first thing you need to know is just as we talk about karma, it really goes down to the most subtle actions that we take even with the mind. So thoughts that we have, intentions, motivations, things like that, they're all karmic acts. But not all karmic acts are equal. One little thought passes through your mind. Maybe it is kind of negative, but you don't follow up on it. And, you never really feed that thought with anything beyond just, it just passes through your mind. It's a very small karmic act. On the other hand, taking a physical action like killing an insect, or on the other hand, maybe feeding an animal or offering some kind of support, some kind of comfort to another living being, another very positive karmic act. So I just wanted to start out by being really clear that yes, karma is about the impact of your actions, but it's also about the intentions with which you take those actions. And it's often said that there's multiple parts of a karmic act. So I'll jump into that and then talk about what makes a karmic act kind of heavier or lighter, so to speak, more significant or less significant karmic act. And this is coming from Tibetan descriptions of karma and the way it works. If you're interested, I can write in the chat a couple of books that have more information on this. But first of all, I just want to say there's basically 3 types of karma that are described. So there's positive karma, there's negative karma, and there's neutral karma. And positive karma would be something like, feeding an animal, offering someone new clothes if they're living on the street. Those kinds of helpful actions are considered positive karmic acts because they're helping others and they're also helping ourselves by training our minds in a certain direction, giving us more of an inclination toward, for instance, generosity. So that's a positive karmic act. I've already mentioned a little bit a negative karmic act, so if I decide to step on a bug and smush it, I'm from Texas. There are some really ginormous insects, like giant flying cockroaches and stuff like that. So you might be thinking, what's wrong with just, killing a cockroach because it's big and scary and it could fly at your head? Obviously, there's plenty of folks who are Buddhist and still kill insects, but optimally, rather than killing the insect, I actually have a bug vacuum. So it's a little tube attached to a pretty mild vacuum, and you can vacuum up a bug and flick it outside and set it free. So, anytime that there's an opportunity maybe to cultivate less of an intention to harm other beings, it's an opportunity to prevent that kind of negative karma. But that karma of intending to harm someone else for my own comfort, for my own convenience, for my own, financial benefit, whatever it may be, it's definitely considered a negative act because not only is someone else harmed, but I am also cultivating in the process the intention to harm others. And honestly, anytime you harm someone else, you're kind of also at a subtle level, normalizing harm. So you can't, I think, harm someone else and then give yourself the kind of respect or the kind of attention or the kind of care and compassion that really we all deserve. So even when we harm someone else, even if we get away with it, even if it's just a cockroach and nobody's going to come after us for doing that action, it's still not a great thing to cultivate. So those are the 3 types of karmic actions that we can take. I think we all know about the negative karmic actions, but what I want to focus on today is actually, in a way, more of the positive karmic actions, because those are the ones that can help us to wash away previous negative actions that we've done and actually set ourselves up for a better future. So before I kind of get into the process behind that, I just want to say there's, again, according to Tibetan texts, there's several stages to the way that we create karma. And I'll just simplify it and talk about 3 different stages. But basically, there's the intention to take the action. So, for my example in smushing a bug, there's noticing the bug and there's thinking, whatever I think, oh my God, I don't want this bug to fly at my head. I don't want this cockroach to land in my hair. That's extremely disgusting. So I just immediately form that intention of I feel threatened in some way. I'm going to destroy this other living being. So that's the intention. Ellen says, I always feel bad when I kill a bug by accident. Yes, me too. There are certain times of year here in Texas where, I don't know what type of bugs they are, but they're bugs that mate and they're stuck together for a while and they're all over the place. And if I drive anywhere during that time of year, I end up with all these bugs killed, on the front of my car. It's not great. I try to avoid driving long distances during that time, but it's kind of unavoidable. And I want to talk about this a bit, in the next section of this, we just all create bad karma sometimes. So how can we try and wash that away? So we have the intention, then we have the action. So if my action is going to be killing this bug, maybe I take my shoe and I smush it. So I'm seeing the bug. I have the intention. I take the action. I smush the bug. The action is completed. So the bug is killed. If I miss, I don't just kind of give up and sit back and be that was a bad idea anyway. No, I'm going to keep going until I kill that bug. And then once the action is complete, then I'm like, yeah, I killed that bug. I'm glad nobody's going to land in my hair tonight anyway. So that would be the entire process of taking a karmic action. The intention, doing the act, completing the act, and then like feeling good about the act. So Ellen mentioned she feels bad when she kills a bug. So if you kill a bug and then you notice, oh no, I just killed a bug, and you feel bad about it, it's not as powerful a karmic action as if you see that you've killed a bug and you feel good about it. In that case, I mean, that's it. You've just completed a total karmic action, and you're going to have to face the results of that. But to offer like a better example, an example of positive karma, this is, based on an example that my teachers, Anne Klein and Harvey Aronson at Dawn Mountain Center for Tibetan Buddhism in Houston, they use this a lot. Houston has, a lot, it has MD Anderson, a major cancer center, has a lot of research that happens on, illness and health and stuff like that. So they like talking about, okay, what if you want to make an offering, a donation in support of cancer research? So, I was a grad student in Houston. I didn't have much money, but say that I have like $5 and I want to donate it toward some kind of medical research. And my intention is, I really want to help support the people who are trying to make everyone's lives better. I don't want people to suffer. So my $5, even though it's really small, it's going to be one little drop in the bucket to contribute to that overall, progression of science and the lessening of human suffering. So here it's an intention that I've formed. Say I click online, I go to their, donate button, I donate funds, the funds are transferred out of my account, and then I feel good about it. That's a complete positive karmic action, and it's powerful because I've taken all the steps. And I didn't donate the money and then I was like, oh, I wish I hadn't done that. I'd rather spend that $5 on, I don't know, ice cream for myself. Why did I give that away to other people? So that's a way that I could undermine my positive action. But hopefully, when you do a positive action, you're not having that kind of response afterwards. So that's kind of how you end up creating what's called a complete karmic action, whether it's positive or negative. And honestly, there's also this neutral karma, but there's not a lot of intention. There's not rejoicing in your action or something. If I'm choosing between one type of toothpaste and another, it's not like I'm thinking, I'm gonna harm someone by choosing their competitor's toothpaste. I guess you could do that if you're really into toothpaste, but for most of us, there's not that kind of intention if we're doing these kind of neutral karmic actions. So I'm going to leave them off for right now. But the next thing I want to talk about, I would say, is really the heart of the matter. It's the most important aspect of what I want to talk about today. Well, I guess this and the next thing that I want to talk about are the two most important things for the talk today. But this section, I want to talk about how can you minimize the impact of negative karmic actions that you've already taken. This is a question that comes up a lot in the context of maybe previous lives. So I know not everybody believes in literal previous lives. So you might think about this as, I don't know, I'll just take a celebrity example here. Joe Rogan. He's made a lot of statements as a younger version of himself that are now coming back to bite him. And, whatever you think of him, I think there's a way in which often we kind of say, well, that was me from 20 years ago. I'm completely different now. It is almost like looking back at a previous version of yourself. So the good news is, if you've done stuff in the past that really doesn't align anymore with who you want to be now, you can work on cleaning up that karma. So the first thing is, and the process of cleaning up your karma is kind of like the process of making the karma in the first place. And everything I'm about to say is based on, for anyone who's interested or for anyone who knows what this means, you don't have to look it up or anything, but there's a practice called Vajrasattva. Vajarattatva. It's a Buddha, a deity in Tibetan Buddhism, and you do this practice, and it's a way of washing out all of your negative karma, like from beginningless time. But basically, what that practice involves, and this is the part that is important, is like undoing the actions, like the process of creating the karma in the first place. So if a karmic act begins basically with an intention, cleaning up your karma begins with regretting the thing that you did earlier that you now wish you hadn't done. So for instance, the Tibetan idea is that we've all had countless previous lives. So if I'm going to clean up my karma, I don't even have to start with this lifetime. I mean, I could start with some theoretical previous lifetime where maybe I killed people, or I stole things from people, or I talked badly about people behind each other's back to try and split up relationships or split up communities. So you can create positive actions. You can try and undermine your tendencies in a certain direction, whether or not you think you ever did such a thing in this lifetime. I should maybe even say, when it comes to previous lifetimes, the idea behind how karma functions from one life to the next is whatever I'm drawn to in this lifetime, odds are I was drawn to it in the last lifetime. And there's actually, for those who haven't heard me talk about this, I will try not to geek out too much about it, but there's actually a lot of research that's been done on children who claim to remember previous lives by the University of Virginia, Department of Perceptual Studies. Again, you can Google it if you want to, but the main thing is they've actually found cases where a child claims to remember a previous life. For instance, where there's this one case of a boy who claimed to remember a previous life as a professional golfer. The boy became obsessed with golfing at age 2. He's not obsessed with something super fun like trains or whatever. I mean, I guess golfing is fun. I don't do it, but he got little toy golf clubs for his birthday. He wouldn't stop playing with them. He started competing in professional tournaments when he was, 5 or 6 or something, just really small. So he's like a golfing genius, basically. And the Buddhist explanation for that would be, well, in that previous life, as a professional golfer, he invested all this attention, all this time and energy into really knowing everything about golf, perfecting and honing that golf game. And so it's only natural that in this next lifetime, as soon as he sees somebody swinging a golf club, he's going to be like, oh, I want to do that. So the reason I'm saying this is, how do you even know what karma might be coming from a previous lifetime? If there are tendencies that you have, maybe tendencies towards self-doubt, tendencies towards shame, tendencies toward anger, tendencies toward resentment, I think a lot of us have these deep down tendencies that maybe were fed by our childhood, but maybe there's also a part of it that isn't really explained by our childhood. So if there's that kind of unhelpful pattern that's so deep it just almost feels like part of you, Buddhism would say maybe that is coming from a previous lifetime. But the good news is you can tidy it up. And if you don't like thinking in terms of a previous lifetime, you can also just think about, intergenerational habit patterns. I've been learning more recently about my family. So has my partner. And it just, you start to see, or at least for me, I start to see when I zoom out the focus from these are my issues. And I zoom out the focus and I realize, oh my God, I had ancestors who lived through the Great Depression. I had ancestors who fought in World War II. There's just all these things that get passed down, whether we're consciously aware of them or not. So you can also think of that stuff as sort of intergenerational karma that now you can put an end to. If we think about some of the larger structural issues that at least in the US we're facing now, the legacy of slavery, the legacy of, women not basically having much by way of human rights until, recently, like 150 years ago, maybe. So there's just all this stuff that whether or not we personally set it into motion, it's kind of falling on us to deal with it now. So you can think of all that as karma. And to deal with that karma, and this is really, the heart of the matter, whether you believe in previous lives or not, you start out by noticing the pattern that you want to change. I think for me, like, self-doubt is a huge pattern, and it just seems so ingrained. So I start by noticing it and feeling regret and not wanting to feed that anymore. Not just for my own sake, but because, if I'm forever like holding back from living up to my potential, there's all these other people too who are impacted by that. My family, and just everything we do ripples out, So as you think about what you're trying to tidy up, and as you're, feeling that regret for that habit pattern, if you think about how it ripples out, it just makes it an even bigger motivating factor to tidy your stuff up. And just to underscore, whether you're thinking in terms of previous lives or you're thinking in terms of previous generations, my tendency towards self-doubt, I didn't start that. Like, I'm inheriting that, maybe from a previous life or multiple previous lives, maybe from other generations, maybe just picking it up from the media as a girl and being made to feel like, wow, I'm never gonna have the right body shape to be beautiful. So I just want to say, I think sometimes we think about karma in terms of like personal responsibility, but there's also this larger way of looking at it in terms of someone else, whether it's a previous life, ancestors, whoever, they set this into motion and now I have to deal with it. So there's no need to feel shame. There's no need to feel like, wow, if I could just get my act together, I wouldn't have this karmic issue. It doesn't really matter. You can let go of that, who started it, whose fault, blah, blah, blah. You have an opportunity now to end it. And that starts with, noticing the pattern, feeling regret about the pattern, noticing the impact that it's had on you and on other people, like just feeling, really tasting why it's harmful. So that's kind of like a way of counteracting that first step of the intention. So the next part of counteracting negative karma from the past is actually generating positive karma now. So especially if there's something you can do to directly counter that negativity, if the negative habit pattern has been resentment or anger, maybe there's a way you can reach out to the people who have been impacted by that, family members or loved ones or colleagues, whoever, if you can start just doing something kind for them. Even if the person has passed on, you can at least send loving kindness to them. So you're taking some action of body, speech, or mind that's positive, and even better, it's maybe directly counteracting that negative tendency. And again, if you think about karma in terms of momentum, if you think of it in terms of a bank account, there's just kind of like good and bad, you're like putting money into the account or you're taking money out. But if you think about it in terms of momentum, you're just heading in a certain direction. So if you've been heading, west and you want to head east, then the first thing is you stop feeding that westward momentum. You're noticing that it's not helpful. So that's kind of step one. You're already slowing down, and then you begin to actually move in the opposite direction when you take action, toward that positive karmic tendency that you want to cultivate. And then finally, once you've taken that positive action, you're heading in the other direction, you can cultivate a sense that you never want to do that negative thing again. So it's almost like you're not just moving back in the other direction, you're trying to burn the bridge behind you so you don't end up like falling back into that because it feels comfortable, it feels familiar. There's a lot of really, understandable reasons that we tend to fall back into these patterns. But if you can really set that motivation of like, it's not even an option anymore, it helps to move in the other direction. And if, part of that, like, I'm not going to take that action anymore, I'm going to go in this other direction. Part of that is like when you take that positive action, there's a Buddhist idea of like dedicating the merit of your practice. So you don't necessarily have to think about like dedicating that positive action for like the benefit of all living beings, but you can if you want to. But if you think really about what future am I creating? Like, I'm moving in this direction now. I want to keep moving in this direction because of the benefits that it brings to you, because of the benefits that it brings to everyone around you. And honestly, we're thinking now about the future. So like the ripples of that action are going to keep showing up in your lifetime until it's over. And like if there are multiple lifetimes, it's going to keep showing up into the next lifetime too. So all of that is a really powerful reason to notice what you're doing and to not just do it, but be intentional, to really have a vision for moving in this other direction that you chose. So that brings me to kind of just to wrap up. I've already really talked about, how to move in a new direction, but I just want to say it's not just that, I was going west and now I'm going east, right? Like, it's really that we have this opportunity in every single present moment to shape who we're becoming. Like in the short term, but in the potentially infinitely long term too. One of my extended family one time mentioned that in like shows like Back to the Future, there are these moments that are so important and somebody goes back in time and they just do one thing like very slightly differently and it changes their whole future. And he was like, a shout out to Matt if you're watching or listening. He was like, why don't we think about that for the present instead? That the actions I'm taking right now can have these big rippling out kind of effects. It's sort of like when we think about our future, the time to act on that is now. It's like investing for retirement or, any kind of like investment. To come back to that like banking metaphor for karma that I'm not like a huge fan of, but I think it works in this case. I'm not just taking positive actions because like it'll make me a good person or, it'll make me more spiritual or something. Like I get to shape who I become. And I think that's profoundly empowering. Like to me, that's one of the reasons that Buddhism really, it speaks to me so much because it's just very practical, and it's in line with what you can see within this one lifetime. The decisions I made about, what to study in high school led to what I studied in college, which led to the path that I'm on right now. And there are just certain things that, like, had I done something a little differently or invested my time in something else, everything could look different. And not even in like a better or worse kind of way, but just the focus of my life could be completely different. And I think, often we think of like mindfulness as just a means unto itself, just like being mindful in the present moment. It is already good. I mean, it's already stress relieving. It's already, it helps you get grounded. But like from a Buddhist perspective, when you're really mindful in every moment, you get way more choice, way more flexibility in terms of how to respond to a situation and what you're kind of putting out that's going to go into the future on your behalf. So yeah, I want to conclude by saying, if you can look at karma not in terms of, you're bad, 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 and you need to get good. But like, we've all done stuff we wish we hadn't done. How can we try to reduce the impact of that, maybe even reverse the impact of that, and instead grow into who we want to be? I think often it's easy to fall into a sense of shame about stuff we've done, in the past. It wasn't skillful. It doesn't represent us anymore. And that shame is not helpful. So I just want to underscore this for anyone else like me who's coming from a Christian tradition and maybe, received a lot of training in shame when you were younger. It's not that we're a bad person. It's that there are just these like ripples of karmic momentum in a certain direction. And when you wake up to them and you decide to stop them or change them or transform them, you don't have to worry about, am I a bad person or not? Like, we're all innately Buddhas, according to Buddhism. Like, you are a Buddha, and your job is not to become a good person, it's to wake up to who you already are. And the task of cleaning up your karma is just one way of beginning to arrive back at who you actually are again, instead of feeling bound by, the past, which I think for all of us, there's stuff we would change. And there's a way. Like, that's the really great news. There's a way to tidy that stuff up and to set ourselves on a better path for the future. So I know there's a bit of a delay, but if anybody has questions or comments or your own perspective, please feel free to drop them in chat. And while you're doing that, I want to let you know that my book, The Buddhist Path to Joy, which is all about the Four Noble Truths and the basics of Buddhist teachings, that came out today. It is free. You can grab it right now if you search on Amazon. And if you're listening to the recording of this later, I'll have a link to that in the comments. But I hope that you can grab that and get some benefit out of it. There is a section that talks about karma, different realms of rebirth. It doesn't go into as much depth about how to, use karma, I guess you could say, but there's a bit in there about it. So Josky says, so beautiful, gratitude. Keith made a donation. Thank you so much, Keith. I totally appreciate that. Ursula says, so helpful again. Thank you so much. Logan says, thank you. Thank you all so much for tuning in. I hope this is an opportunity to reflect on your own karma, who you want to be, and to feel like empowered that you can actually grow into a version of yourself maybe you can't even imagine right now, but you just want to go in a certain direction, maybe more clarity, more kindness. Thank you, Keith. So thank you everybody for tuning in. Happy Monday. Oh yeah, if you would like to make a donation, that is super helpful. I totally appreciate it. It also helps to support Insight Timer. Mostly have a wonderful Monday and happy karma tidying. Oh, and also, I'm going to be talking about reincarnation tomorrow. So if you're interested in karma and you want to talk or you want to hear about reincarnation, please join me same time. And also on Wednesday, I'm going to talk about nirvana, which is basically the state of liberation that you can reach when you completely wake up out of the karmic cycle. So thank you so much, friends. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.